Welcome, Clarity Coders. Today we're going to create this guessing game using PyQt5 that we installed last time and see if we can get a working game. So basically our game is going to be a number guessing game where it gives you so many guesses to guess a number between 1 and 10. And then as you can see, when you get it right, you jump up in the round and it increases in difficulty. Let's jump right in. So first things first, I'm going to assume that you have Qt5 installed, Python installed. If you don't, look in the top right corner of the video right now, and I have a video that will help you install all the requirements you need for this tutorial. I'm going to open up our designer. I still have a shortcut on my desktop here. I'm going to select main window and click create. And now I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop the items we're going to use in this onto the screen. So we're going to put some labels on first. So I had a label for the current round we're on and a label for the actual round counter. And then I have a high score label and your high score round. So this is going to be just say something like the round score, high score, and then your best score so far. Now to set these up, I'm going to just type in round. I'll type in high score here. Down here, we're going to start it on round 1. And our highest score is going to be round 1 if we haven't completed a high score yet. Now I'm going to set some of these up in properties over here on the right side. So I'm going to expand this geometry box, and I'm also going to give the label a name. So the first label I'm going to call our round label. I'm just going to start it at position 100, and Y I'll start on 20, that's fine. I'm going to give it a width of 100 and a height of 22. I'm going to go down here and change the font. I'm going to change it to Arial just because I think most of you will have this on your computer and it looks a little nicer, a little like we customized it. And I'm going to set it to a font size of 14, push OK. And I'm also going to align the text to center. So down here under alignment, I'm going to switch this to horizontal center. Awesome. We got that all set up and we're just going to do that exact same stuff for the rest of these items. Now I'm going to kind of speed through these, but I do have my UI available for you, the file available for you if you want to grab that from our GitHub, along with the full source code here. And this GUI will be available for you. We're not going to call this losses. We're going to call this high score. We're going to set this name equal to high score label. So this is going to be the basic GUI setup that we have here. So we have a round in the starting round for us. We're not going to start at round 0. We're going to start at round 1. And the high score, the highest round we've been to so far, we're going to default to 1. It's going to give us some information about the guess. So I have guess info here. You can see the parameters I set up. Again, nothing that I didn't show you before. The only thing, Arial 14 font, vertical line is center. This is an entry box, or it's called the line edit here. So that's what I'm using here. And all the default values are set up. This is just a push button. We're going to use that to control our guess. So you can either push the button to guess or you can hit enter to guess. And then I have another label that's called hint that's going to give the user some hints like higher or lower. So again, the naming convention is kind of important for the code I'm going to write. So I called it round label, high score label, round count label, high score count label. This is going to be our guess info. It's going to tell what numbers you can guess between and how many guesses you have left. This is our entry underscore box, our guess button, and I just called this hint for our hint for our program. So again, this file will be available for you if you don't want to create it out yourself. And then I'm just going to save this file on my desktop into a folder I've created for this called high-low. And I'm just going to call it guessgame.ui. Cool, so we got our UI all set up there. We can close out of this. Now I'm going to go into that folder with the UI that we created, and I'm going to open up a command prompt. Remember, I'm just going to type cmd into our address bar, and I'm going to convert this to a Python file. So I'm going to do PyQt5. I'm going to say what my UI file is. So it was guess, and you can push tab here if you're in Windows, and it'll complete it for you. And then my output file I'm going to call it highlow.py. And that's it. We have it created. Now again, like last time, I'm going to open this up in Visual Studio Code. And this is just my core file. You can see I have all my round label, my high score label, my font sizes. You can manually change this now if you want, or do whatever you would like. And you can see that it did create a class just like last time. And again, I'm going to kind of skip over some of the class stuff. So if you don't understand classes or know how classes work, refer to this video above. You'll be able to figure out exactly what I'm doing here. But we're going to have some objects in this class window, some attributes that I want the class to know about. I want all the functions to know about these classes. So the first variable I want everyone to know about is our low number. So we're going to set our low number, and that's the first available number to our program that could be a possible number that we could guess. So I'm going to start that at 1, and I'm going to say our high number, we'll start that at 10. I'm going to create another variable, call it guessesLeft. I just called it guessLeft. I'm going to say that's 5. And now we have to make our random number as well. So I'm going to call this our hidden number. So this is going to be what the computer picks that we're trying to figure out what it is. Now our hidden number, we want to be a random number. So I'm going to import another library up top here. I'm going to import random. That's going to allow this to pick a random number. So to pick our random number, I'm going to call that random library, and I'm going to use randint. And now I can hard code in 2 numbers here. So I could put 1 to 10. And it'll pick a number between 1 and 10. But we want this to get harder as things go on. So I'm going to actually use our variables from above. So I'm going to start it at low number, and I'm going to go up to whatever our high number is. So now why did I create these inside this class? Why is this so important? Well, I want all the functions to be able to use them later on. For example, if you get down here, you can see in this line here, we set guessInfo to equal guess a number between 1 and 10, and you have 10 guesses left. Well, already we can see this isn't true because I decided to use 5 instead of 10. So instead of using these hard-coded values, I'm going to use whatever we set our low and high numbers to in case we change these. So I'm actually going to switch this to an F string, and then instead of 1 here, I'm going to use curly brackets so I can use a variable. And now I want to get to my class variable from above. So I'm going to say self.lowNumber. And here instead of 10, I want to use what was ever in self inside of curly brackets, remember? I want to use whatever was in self.highNumber. And instead of 10 guesses, you can guess it. I'm going to use self.guessLeft. Now this didn't highlight correctly. That's because this isn't an F string. Now you can see that I've changed it to a F string. Now our hint, it says guess higher right now. We don't really want it to start telling us to guess higher. We want it to start kind of invisible there. All right, so now we should be able to test this out. Let's go ahead and run it. And you'll see we got our UI up here, or our GUI rather. And of course it doesn't work. So we need to start hooking this up. So we're going to create a function inside of this class that's kind of going to be the brains of this program. So I'm going to call this function def guess number. We have to pass in one parameter, and that's self. And that's so it knows about the variables that we set above, like low number, high number, and most importantly, our hidden number, so it knows what our guess is. And then the first thing I want to do here is I want to grab the guess of whatever the user is trying to guess here. So I'm going to grab guess, and if you remember, that was in self.entry box. Remember, we created an entry box, and we want to grab the text from that. And now just to test this, let's print out our guess here. And this won't work right now because we need to actually hook up this button. So we can do that back. I did it here in setup UI. So in this setup UI function, I'm going to have a section where I can hook up my buttons. So the first button I want to hook up is our guess button. So I'm going to say when we do self.guess button, I'm going to say when it's clicked, I want to connect our function that was called self.guessNumber. So now when we click our guess button, it should run our function and print out whatever our guess was to the console. Now you can see it prints out a blank there. If I type some numbers in, it prints out my number. Awesome. So we got that all hooked up. So now this is hooked up. So we got our guess here. And the first thing we want to do in our guess program is to check and see if our guess is equal to the hidden number, right? So we want to say something like if guess equals self.hidden number. Remember, this is our random number. Then we want to do something like tell them they got the answer correct. But we have one issue, and that's when we pull in this guess, it's going to be as a string type. We need to convert it to an integer. And if we do that without any error checking, it might throw an error. So I'm going to add a try block here. And inside of that, I'm going to try and convert our guess to an integer. So inside of int, I'm going to pass in whatever the guess was. And this will turn this into an integer, so then we can check to see if it's equal to our hidden number, which is an integer. Now, I'm also going to have an except here. And I want this to catch a certain error. It's called value error. So a value error is going to happen if I try to convert Jake to an integer. It's going to throw a value error because Jake cannot be an integer. So this is going to catch the case where our user accidentally types in something that isn't an integer. And the only thing I want to do if that's the case, I'm just going to write out, I'm going to change self.hint. You remember hint was the little display box at the bottom. I'm going to set that text to equal what? Because that's not a number. So it's not going to count as a guess. It's not going to count as anything. It's just going to set the hint as what to explain to the user that it didn't understand and move on with life. So now inside my if statement, what do I want to happen if this is true? If they guess the correct answer. So if they guess the correct answer, I want the game to get harder. So I'm going to change self.highNumber to equal whatever was in self.highNumber before times 2. So the first round, it's 1 to 10. The second round would be 1 to 20. The third round would be 1 to 40, so on and so forth. I also want to get our new round. So I want to update our round. So I'm going to set a variable called new round, and I'm going to take whatever was in self.roundCountLabel. So it's going to take whatever was in roundCountLabel.text. So remember, we started out on round 1, so it's going to pull in just that 1, convert it to an integer, and then I'm going to add 1 to it. So our new round will be round 2. If we're on round 2 already, it's going to pull that in, add 1 to it, and our new round will be round 3. And now I'm just going to update that display counter. So again, I'm going to do self.roundCountLabel.setText, and I'm going to pass in our new round. And this only takes strings, so I'm going to convert it to a string as well. Now I'm doing some conversions here. Again, we're inside a try block, so it's going to catch the errors anyways, but I'm handling all these. These aren't user input, so I'm not really worried about these throwing an error. So now we should update our round counter now if we get the guess correct. So what else do we want to do here? If the user gets the guess correct, we want to reset the number of guesses they get for the next round. So we're going to say guesses left equals 5. So we're resetting it back to our original number of guesses, and we need to get a new random number. And we're going to do that just like we did before. So we're going to set self.hiddenNumber. We're going to set that equal to random.randint, and we're going to use self.lowNumber as our first number and our new self.highNumber as our second number. So see, we've updated it here. So now this next round is going to automatically be harder. And we also want to reset our game info. So the self.guessInfo, we want to set that like we did before, above. So we want to use something like this. So we're going to say guessinfo.setText, and we can pass in our strings. And now this is automatically, because we use variables here, it's going to use our new, well, we have the same low number, but it's going to use our new high number and however many guesses they have left. So we don't really have to update anything here. And this formatting looks kind of weird. They just kind of wrapped it. So you could even take this out and put it on the same line if you wanted to. So now the win case works correctly now. Should work correctly. So if we run this, we're guessing a number between 1 and 10. You'll notice my guesses don't change or anything like that right now. And it doesn't tell me anything if my guess is wrong. So we don't have a lot done right now to test, but we're assuming that if we guess this number correctly, you'll see I finally got it right there. It was 8, that my round jumps up. So that is working, and this changed as well. It's grabbing a number between 1 and 20 now, but everything else is currently not functioning. But our win case is correct. Now after each guess, we also want to set our self.entrybox.setText. We want to set that back to a blank line. So after we guess a number, if we type something in and push guess, we want it to go back to just a blank entry box here. So if it's correct, we're going to go ahead and set that back to blank. That's our first if statement here. So our next case, we need to check to see if we have any guesses left. So if that was our last guess, then we're going to lose. But if it wasn't our last guess, if we have more guesses, the game continues. So we want to give a hint and we want to decrement our guess counter. So we want to check to see if self.guessLeft is greater than 1. So why am I doing greater than 1 here? So if we come into this loop on our last guess, then our guess left will equal 1. So we need an extra guess left if we get to keep playing the game, or else we've lost. So this is going to be our condition if we still have a chance to win this game. So inside of this, we want to give the user some hints and then decrement our guess counter. So inside of this, you'll notice I'm still tabbed over. I'm going to say if our guess was less than self.hiddenNumber, I want to set self.hint. I want to set the text equal to, I'm going to use an F string here. This will just help us remember our guess too. I'm going to put in our guess variable. So I'm going to put that in curly brackets. Space is too low. So you can see that our guess was less than the hidden number. So our guess is too low. Now the only other case, because it's not equal, because we handle the equal up here. So the only other case is that it's greater than our hidden number. So I'm not going to add any condition. I'm just going to use an else statement here. And I'm going to paste in the same line from above, except in this case, it was too high. And then no matter what, so I'm on the same level as these if statements, no matter what, my self.guessLeft, I'm going to do minus equal. So I'm going to take 1 away from it. Again, I want to remove anything from my entry box. So I'm going to do set text equal to a blank. And I want to repaint the guess info because now we have less guesses left than what we had before. So you notice I can just copy this again because we use these variables instead of hard coding values. So it should update for us automatically. So now our wrong guesses are going to give us some information. So now if we try this out, you'll see it gives us between 1 and 10. I'll just put in 5 and guess. 5 is too low. We'll try 7. 7 is too low. Try 9. 9 is too high. All right, so it should be 8, and you'll see we got it. Now, it didn't update when we won, but it did go to round 2, and it did give us our new numbers. So we probably want to change our hint. We'll update our hint if we got this correct. So we'll say hint.setText. I'm going to pass in an F string, and you'll see here that I just pasted in a line here. It says nice. Now try low number to high number. So it's going to give us a little updated information if we get it correct. Awesome, we're really close now. We only have one more thing to take care of. We're going to use our else statement to handle if we lost. So if we lose, I want to reset all of our variables back to the beginning. So I'm going to set our high and low number back to 1. So back in our else here, I'm going to set our high and low number back equal to 1. Make sure you're tabbed inside. So I'm going to set our low number, our high number, our guesses left. And now because we're inside the class, we need to use self in front of these. Awesome. So those are all going to be resetted. We're ready to play the game again. We just need to give the user the information back that they need. So we're also going to update the board and we're going to set our entry box back to blank. Now the loser will have no idea what's happened. So, not the loser, the player, they're not a loser. So we're going to go ahead and update the hint as well. So the hint, I'm just going to say self.hint set text equal to you lose, it was, and then show them our hidden number. Now let's make this easy for you again. So it's just going to tell them they lost and give them what the hidden number was. Now I also want to update our high score. So I'm going to pull in 2 variables here that we're going to use. I'm going to use new score, which I'm just going to take whatever was in round count label.text, convert it to an integer. And then I'm going to get high score, which was whatever was in high score count label text, pull that in and convert it to an integer. And I'm going to see if we got to a higher round. So if our new score was greater than our high score, then I want to display a new high score. So I want to change this to self.highScoreCountLabel.setText, and I want to set it to whatever our new score was, except remember this only takes strings, so I'm going to convert this to a string. And of course, no matter what here, we want to reset our round. So we want to go self.roundCountLabel.setText, and we want to reset this back to round 1 after we're done. Now, I also wanted to connect one other thing to our button. So if we go up to our setup UI, you'll notice here that you can click the button to guess a number. I also want to be able to just hit enter and guess a number. So I'm going to say self.entrybox.returnPressed.connect. And I'm also going to hook this up to our guess number function. Cool. That should be it. So if we run this, you'll see guess a number between 1 and 10. I can type in 5. I can hit enter. It says 5 is too low. You'll notice it takes our guess down as well. I'll guess 7. And of course it was 8. You'll see we go up to round 2. Our high score stays the same. It says nice. Now try 1 to 20. It reset our guesses as well. So let's get this one wrong. So I'll guess 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. And you'll see low number is not defined on line 140. So let's scroll down to line 140. And you'll see we're referencing instance variables, but we're not using self. So if you see it wasn't defined and it's a instance variable that you set up above in your class, you need to make sure you're using that self keyword. Again, reference that class video that I have if you're confused with that. So we're going to do self.lowNumber and self.highNumber. Run this bad boy again. I'll skip ahead a little bit here so you don't have to watch me. You'll see we got to round 2. This time, let's try again. 5, 5, 5, 5. And it says you lose. It was actually 9. Let's make this easy for you again. You can see I'm now back to round 1 and my high score has been updated to round 2. You'll also notice that it looks like it cuts off my Y a little bit here. So let's update this. You can see that we can update this without recreating our whole UI. So let's scroll up to our hint box. Remember that box was called hint. And you can see here is our hint. And now don't get confused here. You'll notice our object is called hint. The shape below it, so these coordinates below it are actually for the guess button. So we're looking for the hint object coordinates, and you'll see hint up here. And remember, this is X, Y, width of the button and height of the button. So we don't really care how high it is. It shouldn't affect anything else since it's the bottom item. So I'm just gonna double it-ish and set it to 60. And now we can guess our numbers again. And it says you lose. Let's make this easy for you again. It doesn't cut off our Y's. And you'll also notice we didn't test this. If I just type some characters in here, it says what? And it doesn't update anything. And that's it. This is our high-low game. It doesn't look beautiful yet. We're gonna style it a little in our next video. So until then, play around with it, see what you can come up with. And as always, keep coding.